Well, hello, everyone. Looks like we are ready to kick things off. So, welcome officially to Scalable IoT for Developers, where, yes, we're going to collectively survive this shift from prototype to production. I promise you that much. Much more than that, though, we're going to hear from someone who doesn't just use Blues for connectivity and Ubidots for cloud enablement, but has really been through this scaling process multiple times and can provide the insights, context, tips, everything that's going to help developers and product designers to be successful throughout their journey. First, I have some quick logistics to cover. If you have any questions at all during the presentation today, I just mentioned this, but please ask those in the Q&A panel provided in the Zoom UI. We're going to actively answer as many questions as we can as the speakers are speaking, but if we have time at the end, we'll do more of a public Q&A session. Chat is available as well. Just know that we might miss some questions if there's a lot of traffic on the chat. Now, a question we always get right off the bat is this being recorded? The answer is always yes. It is definitely being recorded and will be available on the Blues YouTube channel at this URL. And while you're there, of course, I recommend subscribing to the channel so you can see all the latest video content the moment it's released. But let's get to introductions. So, starting with Cristina Botero, who's a good friend of ours here at Blues and also, more importantly, head of business development at Ubidots. Another great friend of Blues is Germán Suarez, who is co-founder at Sento. Germán is the one with those deployment scars, if you will, but also has that wisdom and lessons learned that he's going to share with us today. Last but not least, we have TJ Van Tol, who is our principal developer advocate, and myself, Rob Lauer from Blues. So you've got a great lineup here for the presentation ahead. So let's talk agenda. Again, today we are hyper-focused on what it means to move from prototype to production. And I don't care if you're scaling from one device to five or from 5 to 10,000, there are certain common core issues that we all need to confront, and we're going to do our best to tackle some of them today. How we do that is to kick things off right away with Germán telling us his story. But that's certainly not all, as Christine is going to tell us more about managing your IoT data at scale with Ubidots, providing some additional context on scaling. And TJ and I will be back at the end talking about scaling with Blues and what that means via hardware, via cloud. We'll even have a new feature to show off that is directly related to what we are talking about today. Now, before I turn things over to Germán, I do want to mention that both Ubidots and Sento are Blues partners. So if you're not familiar with the Blues Partner Program, we've been expanding this partner ecosystem, if you will, to include vetted companies that we know, we appreciate, we trust, really to make sure that once you're beyond the connectivity choice of Blues, you know where to go to find the right partner to assist you, regardless of what stage your product development might be in. So you can check out all of our partners at this URL. And if you're like, hey, I don't even know what this Blues thing is, no worries. Again, I'll be back at the end with TJ to provide some more context on how we tackle wireless connectivity in a relatively novel way, again, after Germán and Cristina. So with that, I do want to hand things over to one of the stars of our show today, that being Germán Suarez from Sento. So welcome, Germán, and let's see if I can exit out of this. Yay, that worked.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen. Okay. Well, Rob, thank you very much for inviting me to the webinar. It's always fun to share some time with the team from Blues and also with Cristina. So I hopefully can help you, share some of our experience and learnings in the way of scaling and developing electronic products. Just to give you a quick introduction about ourselves, I'm Germán Suarez. I'm co-founder and CEO of Sento. I'm a telecommunications engineer, and I've been involved in the IT industry for the last 20 years. And with Sento, we started 10 years ago, and since then, we've been designing, developing, assembling, and providing IoT solutions for different industries. Our biggest clients are in the animal farming industry, but we also assemble and scale electronic products for other companies that already have their own product, and we are the supply chain management partner for them and help them scale the do manufacturing, engineering, and assemble those products from Medellin, from Colombia, and most of them usually go to the US. So since 2015, we have assembled more than 75,000 devices. From then has the US, and we have developed more than 40 electronics products, mostly IoT products. So based on this experience, we learned something, and that hardware is hard. I mean, I'm sure you all already know this, but different from software and from other kind of developments, hardware takes more iterations, take longer iterations, and it's more sensitive to failures or bugs that are originated in the design. So this gives a lot of complexity when developing a hardware product. Just to make sure we are aligned in the expectations of and the differences between a scalable product and a prototype or an MVP, is that one of the things we've learned in these years is that there has been in the past few decades platforms, modules, hardware has been available to accelerate the development of hardware products like Arduino, Raspberry Pi. These kind of platforms accelerate the way we develop electronic products and democratize this capability. So it's no longer exclusive to large corporations. So I mean, any developer or hardware enthusiast can develop a hardware product or a prototype. But we're going to make sure that, because there is a false belief that if you have a prototype or an MVP, you already have a scalable product. You have a product that can be commercialized in large quantities, but that's not true. And having an MVP or a prototype is just 20% of what we feel is like 20% of the total effort of having a scalable product. In a prototype, you focus on testing an idea, the technology to make sure it works, to validate what generates value, to see what the customers of the market really appreciate from that product, to make fast iterations, and it's focused on units and short term, and unit economics are not relevant at this moment. But when you go to a scalable product, then you have to think about the business. Then you have to think about the long-term durability of the product. Having a prototype, it can break in a month, and it wouldn't, and there's no problem on that. But having couple of thousand units on the field and experiencing failures will generate a lot of cost, dissatisfaction, and warranties overhead. So you have to think about long-term durability. User experience and support is important. Fleet management, compliance. Then you're gonna start thinking in going into different markets, countries, regions, and compliance becomes very relevant at this moment, because you can have cost of certifying products that go from $2,000, and if you make the wrong decisions, it can go till $60,000. So if you don't select the right components at the beginning of the design, scalable operation. If it takes 1 hour to configure your product, your device, when you start, it's not a problem. But when you have 10,000 units, and it's going to take 1 hour to configure it, it's going to be a lot of hours of support. Supply chain planning, how you're going to produce, it's going to be your manufacturing partners. How long does it take to get all the components? Cost efficiency, when you're doing an MVP or a prototype, spending $100 more to make it faster, it's not a big thing. But when you have thousands of devices, reducing the cost by $10 in each device, it's a lot of money. And besides all of this, having to, if you're in charge of the business, in general sense, like doing the business development is already a big deal. So there's a lot of things that's going to happen when you scale a product. And so making the right decisions in this process of scaling it or having a scalable product is critical to make sure you succeed or you fail in this process. So as we have like limited time today, I summarize like in 8 bullets what we think are critical decisions in the process of the development of a scalable product. So the first one is creating a product from scratch. Takes time and money. Usually, as engineers, we have the ego that makes us think that we can do everything and we'll do it better and we can do it from scratch, and it will be more satisfying. But it's gonna be more expensive. You're gonna take more iterations and you're gonna be slower. So at this moment, you don't need precision, you don't need cost efficiencies. You need something that works really, that works and that can be validated rapidly in the market. So don't invent the wheel. Start with off-the-shelf solutions. It means off-the-shelf enclosures, off-the-shelf models, off-the-shelf sensors. And when I mention sensors here, I mean that you can find the integrated the sensor, the integrated version, but you can have the breakout or the sensor that comes in the already encapsulated in a protection. So go with them. And once you have more clear on the market, on the need, on when you have larger volumes that you want to reduce costs, then you can go into the low level development of these components. Models that integrate microcontrollers, memory, interfaces, and power management units are very convenient because you will save a lot of effort in the PCB design, the PCB layout. Connectivity can be tricky and demanding and demand a lot of engineering. You would say having a cellular model and connect as a standard, should be like straightforward, make it work with all the operators in different countries, but it's not like that. If it's not the same in the US or in Mexico or in Europe, you have different frequencies, you have different compliance regulations. So you have to make sure that you can, I mean, it will take a lot of engineering from your side to adapt the firmware and also the hardware to make sure it works with the different regions. So compliance can be different in each country. You may need different kind of connectivity technologies. For example, you may need in some occasions to have satellite or cellular, or you already have connectivity on site and you can use the Wi-Fi available and reduce costs. So you will have to iterate between different kind of technologies, making the development more complex. What do we recommend in these cases? Work with models or technology that simplify the connectivity. Models like the one from Blues has helped us a lot in simplifying and reduce development times and effort. Having the Node card, for example, has helped us to ship devices in all Latin America, like Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and also the US, and having the same firmware, having the same hardware, and feeling sure that they're going to work smoothly in those different countries. It's going to handle all the connectivity and the communication with the cloud and the broker. It's going to be a secure communication, so it's very relaxing for us, not having to take care for all the details when configuring the connectivity to the cloud. Cloud platforms are key but challenging. It happens to us, like our team is mainly electronic engineers, so as you are an electronic engineer, you focus a lot on the hardware, but at the beginning, you don't think that how the user, how the market is gonna interact with that, with your data, with your system, and is the point of contact with them. So you have to make sure it's really critical. You can have the best hardware, the best technology, the best sensors, but if you don't have a good looking interface where the user feels where you have like an intuitive interaction with the user, you don't have anything. So you have to make sure you have a great platform, but that takes a lot of development, database management, IoT brokers, connectivity, data visualization. It's a lot of work. So in this case, in our case, we've been working with Ubidots, and it's been a great experience because we don't have to take care of anything related to the data management, to the user configurations like permissions and everything. We know and that we know that the data is gonna be backed up, and so it's been very useful, and it has helped us focus on what really matters. How the user wanna see the information, which way, which channels, what kind of visualizations they wanna have. So it has been very useful because it takes care of all of everything related to the backend configuration, but it gives us the flexibility to customize the interface as we need. Just going to more like specific recommendations when developing the product, make sure you have OTA available. Over the year, update has been real critical for us because it has reduced our operations efforts. Because when you feel like you're ready, you deploy the devices and you realize after a couple of weeks, days, or hours that there is a bug. There is a bug on your firmware, on your hardware, and having OTA available help us deploy massive updates on the firmware and reducing times and effort of taking people or operations teams to do the operations on site. Consider compliance and certification since the beginning. Use pre-certified components. As I was mentioning at the beginning, if you use pre-certified components, certifications can be around $2,000 per unit. But if you don't have certified components, it can be more than $50,000, and it will take longer. For example, key things to keep in mind at this moment is that if you have in your device more than one model that has like a wireless transmission that has a radio component, then certification process is more complex than if you have one. Or if you have one model that has different radios, but it's already certified, the model itself is already certified, like the one, for example, from Blues that has a Wi-Fi plus LTE communication integrated, but the module is already certified, then it will simplify your certification process of the whole product. So it's important to keep in mind that maybe saving a couple of dollars in a model that's not certified won't make sense in the long-term strategy. Keep it simple, standard. At the beginning, you want to have all kind of functionalities, LEDs, displays, yeah, like I don't know, all kind of lights in your device. It will make it more complex, and it will, I'm sure users won't find it useful at all. So start with the core, what you know it's useful, and from there you can start add functionality. Think about the operation, support, remote diagnosis, SIM card management. If you if you need to have SIM cards. For example, with Blues, we don't use SIM cards, so that's another another thing that we don't have to take into account anymore. Maintenance and repairs over the year, as I was mentioning before. It's important that you keep your engineering and your production teams together. In getting both your manufacturing partner or your manufacturing team in the development of the process. We've seen a lot of projects where they have like a really nice enclosure, and when we go to the plastic injection partner, they say this cannot be injected, impossible, or it's gonna be 3 times more than if we replace this part of this component, or making sure you have availability of the components that you're using, electronic components, and so inviting the suppliers of electronic components to the conversation is always like very useful. A new product introduction, the way when you the transition from development to production is a key, and it can be very easy or it can be very complex depending on the decisions that you do and you take in the development. Finally, some general recommendations for this strategy when it comes to product development. You have to keep a short-term, a long-term balance. Don't think that you're gonna be developing a product that's gonna be produced for the next 10 years, because that's not gonna happen. This is a never-ending process. You're gonna keep improving your process at the same time as you're manufacturing. So making sure you take decisions that can be changed easily, but that are gonna cover operations. Key aspects in the operation in the future is very important. Forecast and planning never happens as Excel's say. Yeah, we've seen a lot of projects where companies say we're gonna build this year 1,000 units, but next year we're gonna build 50,000 units. That never happens. So don't think when you're designing the product you're gonna build thousands, hundreds of thousands of that device. Try to think in the short, midterm, because that's where you have more control. Test fast, improve, and test again. Use 3D printed parts as much as possible. Test them, and also prototype PCBs as fast as possible. Test them. Components. We find a lot of components that don't behave as the data sheet says. So having a prototype as soon as possible is key to make sure that it's working fine and stable. And having the right, the best help at the beginning is very useful. Having conversations, getting people with experience involved, getting recommendations, it's critical. Taking enough time at the beginning to make sure you have the right architecture, you have the right components, you have the right strategy is key in order to avoid mistakes in the future that can be very expensive and take longer to solve. So yeah, this like really quick. I have many more learnings, but just this is a highlight of what we think is critical to keep in mind when developing or scaling an electronic product.
That's fantastic. I think, yeah, I love that you brought up the compliance issue as well, because I think that's one thing that I've personally seen often is that it's just something that people aren't really considering, especially in the early phases, and then it can be such a roadblock later on. So that's absolutely something to be considered in the early stages. Thanks, Herman.
Perfect. Can you see my screen, Rob?
Yeah, looks good.
Good. So thank you for the invitation, and it's great to see you. Like as you mentioned, you're both colleagues and friends. And for all of you out there listening, and companies like Sento, I first want to really tell you that my admiration is huge for the all the work you put out there. If it wasn't for companies like you that are putting things together, figuring out the hardware, the connectivity, cloud, and climbing into tanks, mothering things like companies like us wouldn't exist. So all the credit is for people who are actually out there scaling their solutions. So when it comes to scaling the cloud, I just wanted to give you like some perspective on this data that I found fascinating. So apparently GPT is processing around 1 billion queries a day. Sorry, it says week. But it's crazy because when it comes to the cloud, if we compare it to an IoT fleet, if there's a fleet of around 30,000 devices with 20 variables and just sending data to the cloud every minute, this is the exact same data that is being handled. So we can think about it as the internet of people, like we are people and we sleep, but devices never sleep. And this is something that has to be monitored 24/7 and that you just have to keep an eye on it. So this is why the scalability um, conversation is very relevant. Just a little bit about Ubidots. We offer a whole IoT platform for integrators or companies like Sento to be able to go faster to market with a just very hardware agnostic, but going specifically to end users, verticals, and solutions. So I've been in the company for 6 years, and I wanted to tell you like three things. As Germán also mentioned, there are a lot of things we'd like to talk about, but three things when it comes to scaling that maybe sound pretty intuitive, but it's better to know better than later. So the three points are first, don't scale chaos. The second is keep your eyes on the unseen. And finally, just because this is relevant and a little bit on the same thread as don't reinvent the wheel, just how, for example, use AI to accelerate, but not to replace. So just, okay, first, don't scale chaos. So before you scale, so just make sure that your system makes sense to someone more than you. So I'm gonna tell you like a story. We have a client, and they're one of the biggest like household appliances manufacturers in South America. So they produce like refrigerators and microwaves, you name it. They have more than 200,000 units a month. So, for example, the manufacturing manager, he's a superhero. He found the system, he starts connecting all these things, he starts pulling data from the PLCs, building the dashboard, he starts to see some wins. But he was like, okay, well, I should share this with the maintenance team as well. And if they have access to the portal, so they started to connect so many things, create so many dashboards. Like it got to a point where we didn't know if this was like on production testing, and you can imagine just like hundreds of like this big chaos. So this is very common. So you start at the beginning and you just don't know how to keep growing in a very organized manner, or it's not as important. So just we went back to the drawing board, we started organizing like some things, and 2 years later it's very smooth. It runs, and just like they even running AI models on top. And anyway, just like um, I think that when you are scaling very fast, it's like driving a car blindfolded. Like you can go fast, but then you can just hit a wall if things are not very organized from the beginning. So what are the Ubidots enablers, for example, to help with this organization as your fleet grows? For example, we have device types, device groups. So, for example, this let you, as Germán mentioned before, you should not spend 1 hour configuring one device. So imagine if you have 1,000. So we have something called the types that are basically templates that allow you to like onboard thousands of devices with the same configuration. We also have the device groups. For example, with the same manufacturing company I just mentioned, it's very easy now for them to look for this is a PLC, this is a temperature sensor, and this is the packaging line and plan B. So you would land exactly where you need to be, and now with just that big method devices. Um, Another, for example, very cool feature are like specific things to put on top of the dashboard. So both the multiple devices dashboards and dynamic. So the multiple devices dashboards is, imagine you have like the fleet is ready, it's connected, so you can like aggregate it from multiple devices in that dashboard, so you can just with a single view be on top of everything. And of course, the multi-tenancy. So that's a key feature for any cloud provider that you're looking for. That means that this means that you can start to create your own groups, organizations, either if it's your end clients or your business units. So you assign specific entities to each of them, and even, for example, put tags on it. So just the fact that you organize the whole hierarchy, that's gonna like give you a lot of peace of mind. Something as simple as keeping an Excel sheet. So you know that for product A and line A, you create your own terminology, you share it with your company. This is a best practice that should not be avoided. So that's in terms of like scaling the entities. So number two, so it's eyes on the unseen. So this means that sometimes like the most valuable alerts or things that are happening is exactly of what is not happening. So I'm gonna tell you like a story. This might not sound like your typical IoT success story, but it's one of those situations where it reminds you why visibility matters, especially for the unexpected. So there's another client there. They produce food. It's a food company, and they specifically produce potato chips, and it's pretty cool to visit because you get all these samples, and they're awesome. But anyways, they had set a local Wi-Fi deployment, so machines were connected, data was flowing, all good. So to get these devices online, they had installed a cellular gateway. So it was the bridge to the internet for the whole line. Huh. So one day, like an operator unplugged the gateway accidentally. The power cable like circuited and tripped the PLC panel and the like a breaker, and it was like a major breakdown. But luckily, and as simple as it sounds, we had like inactivity alerts. So as soon as the gateway went offline, the system flagged it. So without the alert, they could have spent hours looking at what was going on and what caused it. So even if you have like very robust like dashboards or a system in place, dashboards are not meant to look at them 24 hours a day. And as I mentioned, we sleep. So I have this little saying here: you cannot babysit the fleet. Your system should be watching itself. Um, Another like example could be this is a company in Canada. They are monitoring air compressors. Air compressors spend so much energy. For example, an air compressor that runs in a day is equivalent to 8 households. So imagine this is a real use case. They were monitoring a company and they had the air compressors on all the time. They didn't even like turn it off over the weekends. So something as simple as turning off this air compressor for the weekend would just save the energy equivalent to the 8 households multiplied by 3. This is money, this is emissions, this is so many things. So scaling is not only about thousands of devices, it's looking at the most critical data to be monitored and start to provide your customers those quick wins on money and time. And that way they're going to say, okay, let's monitor this line or these new machines, but go to the machines that hurt the most and that they're unseen because nobody cares. It's on the weekend and they don't even know it was there on for like at least 10 years. Who knows? So that unseen world is like a major added value to scale operations in IoT. Small wins, huge impact. Some things that Ubidots allowed for you to build this. So for example, there's way to enrich your data. It's not about the raw data. It's everything that you can give to the logic behind it. So it'll be functions, synthetic variables. You can write functions to filter or delay alerts. And then you put this with the events and alerts. So these are very two powerful modules combined. If you enrich your data and then you create a way to be on top of it whenever it's needed, like that's when you're gonna act. You should act on your data, and there should be a way for you to detect it. And for example, on screen, that's for example an incidents widget that basically allow you to just keep track of if the incident was resolved or not, and just make sure that it's not just unseen or that it becomes like repetitive. So okay, finally, we were saying how we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we should use AI or even like tools to accelerate, but not to replace the whole stack. So it's very common for us to see projects or companies who they decide to do their own hardware from scratch, do their own connectivity from scratch, or even like go out and build a platform that they either end up coming back or they like, yeah, as mentioned, let us handle the headache of taking care of your devices while you sleep. But you're the expert on your industry. If you're into energy management or manufacturing, just use all these tools to just be superb on whatever you're delivering out there. Um, and there's always like this question of build versus buy, and I think this is very like this is where the conversation comes relevant. I want to show you finally a very quick just testimony of a customer who is like doing all the things on top of Ubidots and like putting all this. This is just a video. I'll share 1 second after we.
Using VS Code and Gemini, just learning all the tools. It's on a dashboard right now. It's working. But to go from basically not knowing about you guys to doing some pretty custom high-end, I would say, PDF certificate generation in only a few short years, it's all thanks to you guys. It's thanks to kind of AI and what that has empowered, fake coders like me to achieve. But now we don't ever see a scenario where a client comes to us and says, can you guys do this? And we say no. We went from audits and reports to now being, the de facto go-to guys for custom kind of boutique IoT solutions. And it's been a fun journey. So I just wanted to finish off with that because I literally spent all week encoding this. I'm pretty proud of it.
Cool.
Using VS.
So the same way as our friends from Quantify were able to achieve these, we wanted to share what are the features in place that allow you to do so much on top of Ubidots and just any system out there. You should be looking up for this. So you can develop your own native widgets using just all our systems in place. And not even you can develop your own. You can also put dashboard pages. So you can embed Power BI if there's, for example, a forecaster that you want to put in, or like the case we just saw before. And we were talking about compliance. So for example, if your customer really needs a report because they need to pass a compliance test and all the data is already being ingested in the platform, then create the exact same report that your company is asking for. So that's the example of flexibility. We can also do machine learning, and that's like something that of course is so important once you have a lot of historical data. And of course, integrations, like either to third-party platforms or to put it in or put it out, like systems should be open and it should not be a closed box. And this is what really will allow you to go to the next level when you really want to put this out in the deployment and really be like in the standards that the market is asking for. So that was that part of Ubidots is hard to check, but I would love to just follow up if anyone is interested. And thank you for the time. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Christina. I think we need to do a one of our webinars together has to be like a pet show and tell, I think, so we can.
He's right here. Yeah.
All right. Now you get to watch me stumble through trying to share my screen again. Oh, maybe it's better this time. All right. Yeah, thanks, Christina. Thanks, Herman. Great stuff. So as we continue today, I did want to take a very brief moment to provide a quick primer on what Blues is and what we offer for those of you who are new to Blues. So what is Blues? Well, I'd start by saying Blues is all about connecting your product to the cloud. And that really starts with the note card. So note card is not just a modem, it's a system on module, meaning it contains a radio, components, associated circuitry to make it function as a standalone wireless connectivity module. And our biggest one right here is pretty tiny, measuring 30 by 42 millimeters, making it pretty easy to embed in virtually any product. What does it do? Well, note card adds cloud connectivity. So I like to think of it as occupying this really boring space here, right? The part of cloud enablement that you don't want to deal with, right? You're good at building your product, you're good at building your cloud application, and we provide that seamless bi-directional data flow between the two. Now, during my time at Blues, I've learned a few things that get people really excited about the note card. The first is on the cellular side, our note card provides global cellular reach. It ships prepaid with 500 megs of data, 10 years of service, no monthly SIM fees. So if your product sits on the shelf for 3 months, it costs you nothing at all. You can literally connect your product to the cloud in 2 lines of code for real. It's also built to be low power, so it consumes about 8 to 18 microamps when idle, depending on the note card, the type of note card that you are using. And what are those types? Well, there's plenty of note card options depending on the radio you want to use. We have a whole line of cellular note cards that support LTE-M, Cat1, Cat1 Biz. There's a Wi-Fi only note card, a LoRa only note card. Those two are quite inexpensive, starting at about $10 each. There's also a dual cell plus Wi-Fi note card, so it includes cellular and Wi-Fi on the same board. And we have a satellite add-on that provides backup satellite connectivity in supported regions. Now, the coolest thing about all of these is that they're all swappable, both in terms of the physical connector, that M.2 edge connector they use, but also the fact that you literally use one API the same way to program all note cards, meaning whether you're deploying with cellular or Wi-Fi or both or LoRa, put them all together, you can build one set of firmware. So you can have a mixed deployment very easily with note card. Now, note card is really only half the story here at Blues, and this is important for today because the other half is our cloud service we call Notehub that's going to help you scale. The two do work together to form what we call a device-to-cloud data pump. So in practice, what that's going to mean is usually developers start with us with a starter kit. They're going to hook up some sensors to it. They're going to start reading data from those sensors and then deliver that data securely to Notehub. Notehub, and this is the important part, Notehub is going to route that data to your cloud, like Ubidots, for instance. So to be clear, Notehub, yes, it is a cloud service, but we're not trying to create a platform that locks you in. We really exist to help you connect to your platform. Could be AWS, Azure, of course, Ubidots, and so on. You can also use the APIs we provide to access your data as a data source for other cloud-based applications. Now, Notehub does provide fleet management that TJ is going to be going over in a bit, and event management, alerting, OTA firmware updates that Herman brought up, you name it. Like in terms of data management, Notehub really does have you covered. However, to be super clear here, we do not and will not ever replace what your cloud platform, such as Ubidots, is going to provide you. Now, that's Blues in a really quick nutshell, but I did want to quickly move on to our topic today, and that is what it means to scale a product with Blues. And I wanted to approach this. I'm taking the boring parts. TJ gets to do the fun parts, but I'm going to take the boring parts and talk about the hardware and the pricing angles, and then hand it over to TJ to talk specifically about some new Notehub features that pertain to scaling. And let's talk about scaling your BOM costs, because it is one thing to get started with one of our starter kits for $99, but most of us are not going to be building products that can afford a $99 BOM edition, right? So how do we address that? Well, as a significant cost reduction from our current LTE Cat 1 note card, I'm very pleased to say that we are finally offering our new, what we call mid-band note cards for sale next week. These support LTE Cat 1 Biz, which effectively performs as well as the full Cat 1, but lets us use a less expensive modem, just one antenna as well. So this can really significantly lower your costs. But if that is too much for your BOM, we also have the Note Card XP, which we announced probably about a year or so ago, which is a pretty exciting offering for us. XP starts at $19 for cellular. It does let you pick and choose the Note Card features that you need at scale. This is very much an at-scale product, though. I think there's a minimum order quantity for these, so this is not like something you would buy a onesie twosie off the store. So this is like for serious scaling customers, but it can really reduce your BOM costs. Now, lastly, on the hardware side, the bridge between Note Card and your product is typically a carrier board. We call them note carriers. Now, either you're going to design one into your product using our open source designs, or you're going to use one of ours. And we actually have a relatively new note carrier called the XM, which is only $5 here today. So this is a great way to get started, or to frankly to scale with Note Card. So we are trying to make it easier to scale with off-the-shelf connectivity products. If you're curious about these, specifically with the LTE Cat 1 Biz Note Cards or the XM, you can see them on our store. at shop.blues.com. Again, except for Notecard XP, as that requires a separate engagement, but you can reach out to us on blues.com for that as well. And I want to go back to this slide as well because Blues, again, we're not just about cellular, right? When you choose Blues, you can mix and match radios without changing your firmware. For example, I mean, I know I'm repeating myself here, but if you know that a certain region has reliable LoRa or Wi-Fi, you can deploy a subset of your product with these much less expensive note card options, and then use cellular, maybe add satellite backup in other regions where connectivity is more questionable. Now, pricing hardware is one thing. How do you also price in your cloud costs at scale? Well, at Blues, we are not trying to nickel and dime our customers. As you are prototyping, you are on the free Essentials Notehub plan that offers 5,000 free events per month for as long as you need it. So that's over 150 events per day. Now, as you start to scale, we truly want to be your partner here. So we offer enterprise service agreements that are tailor-made for your unique use cases. For example, just as a pricing example, like when you scale with Blues, our per event discount price starts, so the minimum discount is 50%. Now that does scale up to 70% at an almost incalculably small, what is it, $0.000225 per event, meaning if I do my math right, you'd have to send about 50 events just to reach 1 penny of cost. So that's like the hardware and the pricing thing. I know I went through all of that really quickly, but again, feel free to get in touch with us via our community forum at discuss.blues.com with any follow-up questions after today. Ping me on LinkedIn, whatever it may be. But with that, let's transition to the fun stuff at Blues and see some more of the technical details of Notehub in action. So TJ is going to show this stuff off. So let me stop sharing and TJ should be able to take over.
Yeah, so I'll bring up my screen. I want to end by just a quick demo, show you off some new things that we are working on Notehub. We released 2 features that somewhat fortuitously are related to scaling. This was great timing, so felt the need to show them off. What you're seeing on my screen is Notehub. This is a Notehub project. This is showing a list of my connected devices. I've got one device that's already connected. I will be adding another one in a second as part of this demo. And I want to show off the 2 new features, one called Batch Jobs, and the other one is going to be called Smart Fleets. I'll do Batch Jobs first. Batch jobs are just a way of running basically a batch process on your project, just making changes to a bunch of devices or a bunch of fleets at one time. A job itself just has a name and then this JSON configuration. And the JSON configuration, if I just quickly scroll through our docs down here, you can get a sense that there's a lot that you can potentially do here. There won't be a test on this. I'm not going to show every single value, but just a bunch of configuration you can do that put into this job, and then all at once run it against your projects and your devices. So I'm going to show 2 of them real quick because I think examples will help make this make some sense. So I've got one for provisioning, which is another like common task that you want to do as you start to scale. Herman talked about this, about automating some of these processes. So if you know when new devices show up, I want them to show up with some initial configuration. You can use our batch jobs feature to do that. So I'm going to pick this provision.json job, and the actual value of this is over here. And again, I'm not going to go through every bit of syntax, just to show you that I'm saying I want to provision a certain product UID that is part of my Notehub project. And very specifically, I'm going to add an environment variable to this device, and I'm going to start all my devices off in this fleet that I configure. And then down here, I have to tell the script about which devices specifically I'm adding. So I've got a second note card sitting on my desk down here that, per the QR code sticker, I know has this identifier. So I'm going to default it to a certain serial number. I'm going to default it to a fleet. I'm going to default it to an environment variable. So I will save this. And each batch job in Notehub, you'll see that I have 2 different buttons here. You can perform dry runs of these jobs. This gets important in the context of scaling because for my script here, I don't think anything's going to go wrong because I'm just configuring one device, and I've done this a couple times prepping for this. But if I'm provisioning, setting up a batch, I got 1,000 devices in at the factory, I might want to do a dry run to make sure I didn't typo one of those device UIDs and that everything is actually going to run successfully. So I could do a dry run, I could view the report, see if there's any problems and deal with it there. before I run the whole deal. But like I said, since I think this one's going to work just fine, I'm going to go ahead and run this, do this provisioning. And then once this provisioning is set up, what I can do, so I've got my second device over here all ready to go. I'll create I will just do a sync on this device, add it to my product. And what this is going to do is once I go back to my devices, you can see Notehub already knows about it. And then once it finishes, there it goes. You'll see that it comes into Notehub with this serial number, and it had the fleet new, and then it also has this interval as well. So this is just an automatable thing you can set up. You can build into the process that when you get new devices in, you need to connect them with batch jobs. You can set them up. You can set up a process so your devices appear with some default configuration. I'll show one more real quick because it's not just about provisioning. The other two things you can do is sort of configure your devices and then also run reports. So I'll just show off the configuration part of this. I've got a second JSON file here, and I'll drag that over real quick. So in this case, I don't have any provisioning logic in here. Instead, I'm selecting devices. So there are a number of different filters you can do as part of this specification. So in this case, I'm selecting just that exact same device that I just added. I could select fleets here. There's other filters I could use as well. And I'm saying in this case, here's the things I want to apply as part of this batch job. So I'm saying every device that you select, I want you to leave the new fleet and to join the production fleet, and then to alter this environment variable that I set up by default. So envision this as a script that you would run on devices once you've tested them in the factory and you're ready to set them out in the world. This is an automatable step that you could run and say, okay, it's no longer new. This is a production device. This is the set of config I want it to have. And if I go ahead and run that, and I'll just do the full run right away, what I should be able to do is go to my device and switch the environment variable, make sure it was set, and it was, and it was added to the production fleet as well. So pretty simple in my little contrived demo here with two devices, but you can see how this could be really useful if your device list is like some of our customers and you have thousands of these devices here. You have lots of different configuration values. This gives you another tool in your toolbox in Notehub to automate some of these tasks. So speaking of which, I said two features. I want to make sure to get to the other one, and that is smart fleets. So fleets in Notehub are just ways of grouping your device. I've already been using them a little bit here with new and production. Smart fleets are just regular fleets. So I'm going to create a new one here called high temp. And I can either set it up as a smart fleet from the start, or I can just create it and add what we call the smart fleet rules later. And what these rules do is give you a way of dynamically determining which devices should be part of a fleet. So fleet management in Notehub is normally quite a manual process. Even if you're doing it through batch jobs or the Notehub API or whatever, you're still taking a device and saying this device goes in this bucket, basically quite manually. What smart fleets let you do is apply some logic to the process. And again, I think it's a little bit easier to see with an example. So I'm going to grab my smart fleet rule I have saved over here and paste it in. And once again, I'm not going to give go over the exact syntax details. If you care about that, the docs go through this in quite a bit of detail, and you could read through this later. The gist of it, though, is I'll just give you the cliff notes of this. The first thing I'm checking is this the data I care about? So if I'm looking at my data, then this is the logic I'm interested in. If this is some unrelated metadata, this is basically just saying don't worry about it. The key to this, the bit to focus on, is this bit right here, because picture this as an event comes in related to temperature. And this logic is saying if the temperature that comes in through this event is above my threshold, so in this case, I'm considering anything above 20 to be high temperature, I want to add this device to my fleet, else I want to remove it. So what that ends up meaning is if I save this and I go back to the same device and I create a high temperature event. So again, this logic was looking at data.qo. So this is data.qo. It's looking for a temperature in the body to be above 20. This is 30. So once this syncs to Notehub, which it is just finishing up here, I can go back to my list of devices and see it already processed and I have my device here. So this is, again, just another tool you have to sort of dynamically categorize devices. And a couple things you might want to do with this. So one cool thing is potentially for reporting. Let's suppose that a high temperature means bad in your system, like something is overheating, something is going wrong. If you wanted to build a report of all my devices that have a high temperature so that I can notify technicians or whatever, this gives you an easier way of identifying those devices, because if you're scripting this out, instead of having to go device by device, instead you can say, just give me all the devices in the high temp fleet. And those are the ones that we need to look into or check out. The other cool thing is that fleets that have smart fleet rules are still just regular fleets. And so you can use other Notehub features. So, for example, environment variables, which are values that get synced across devices down to note cards, those work for smart fleets as well. So I could say, hey, devices that have high temperatures, I actually want my reporting interval to be lower because there's a problem and I want to be getting data off them more frequently. And this gives you a really cool sort of dynamic way to set up those interactions. So based off my event data, I can set up configuration in kind of a cool way. But really, overall, what we're trying to do in Notehub is these are both features that came from customer feedback from people that are using our product at scale. And hopefully these just give you some tools that you can use to help build your project up, hopefully applying some of the tips you learned about today. But I know that was kind of a whirlwind tour through these sort of things as well. I'll just repeat what Rob had said as well, that if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on our community forum or reach out to us personally. And yeah, we can give you more information or help you out.
Yeah, that timing was amazing. I just also just posted a link a series of links in the chat as well for Sento Ubidots. And it just so happens that tomorrow TJ and I are doing a Getting Started with Blues webinar. So if anybody's new to Blues and you want more of a deep dive into getting started with us, there's a link you can use there. But I know we're at top of the hour here. I will be sending out a link to the recording probably tomorrow-ish. But thanks, speakers, especially Herman, Christina, fantastic work. Thank you all for attending. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.